keyboards. We got Caleb on the electric guitar. We got Jay on the bass. We got Miguel on the drums. Thank you all so much for coming today. The way these things build, this is our first ever annual, and I'm sure that you'll have another one next year. And the way these things grow is by you guys bringing more people, and then there's more attractions, there's more opportunities, and there's more hot dogs, and there's more chips, and there's more drinks, and all that stuff, and there's more people, and opportunities to reach people with the love of Jesus, because that's what this is all about.
Yes, amen.
Cool. So thank you guys so much. Thank you to this church, amazing church, for hosting this event. Before I sing my last song here, I want to tell a short story behind it. I try to always share a little bit of a testimony anytime I go out and sing, because that's my purpose. My heart and my purpose is to share Jesus with people, and the medium is music. I love doing music, but it's not my passion. It's not like what I just grew up saying, this is what I'm going to do. I grew up thinking I'm going to reach people with the love of Jesus. And so I just want to share it. And I don't know a whole lot of you guys. I don't know your background. We may have people in this tent that have been Christians since you were in your mama's womb, but we also have people in here who sit on the border of belief and unbelief. And, so I just want to share a testimony about this song. This song's called "You're Not Shaking." It was a big radio hit for me several years back. And I wrote it based on an experience that I had when I was 16 years old. I worked as a server at a pancake restaurant called Village Inn. Has anybody ever heard of Village Inn in the house? Hey! There we go. I worked on a Sunday. I'm a pastor's son, so I didn't work a lot of Sundays, but this particular Sunday I worked. And we had Sunday night service, which was where it was at. Like, this is where everybody went in, And so I love being a part of Sunday night service. But this particular day, our brunch went so long, as a lot of pancake houses do, that I got held back to it till it was dark outside. By the time I went home, my dad was already preaching. So we lived in a parsonage. If you don't know what a parsonage is, raise your hand and I'll tell you. All right, everybody knows what a parsonage is. Which basically means our house was right next to the church. Church, parking lot, parsonage. And I pulled up into our driveway, and all of you seem too young to remember this, but there was a time you had to manually get out of your car and physically open your garage doors. Anybody remember this? Hey! I got out of my car to open the garage door, and I heard somebody behind me, and I turned around, and I was met by a masked gun. So he had a gun in his hand, and he was cussing at me, telling me to get away from the car, and I could tell from his demeanor that this gentleman would like the car that I'm driving. And, I did what any, 16-year-old red-blooded American young man would do. And I tried to fight him off of me, but I was also a singer at the time, so that didn't do very well. And I was also 50 pounds soaking wet. So he literally just took me and, with one arm, pinned me against the garage, and he cocked his gun and put it against my forehead. And just like that, I knew my life was over. I knew I was going to die. I didn't. I survived this encounter. I saw a couple people out here, Pastor John, that were like, oh no. I don't want to spoil the story for you, but I did survive. But at the moment, I thought that I was going to die, and so I began to pray. How many of you recognize that when tragedy strikes, your prayer life instantly gets awesome? Anybody seen that? So I start praying and everything, but I didn't even pray that God would protect me. What I did instead was I prayed that God would help me and strengthen me to die like a man, because what I really wanted to do was pee myself and beg for my mommy. And I didn't need that in my life or my death. Somebody from my school would have been talking about that, so I was just praying, God, help me do this. And so after a while, I feel the steel kind of leave my forehead, and I'm like, is this guy going to get on with this or what? I'm starting to get nervous here, And I kind of pop one eye open, and he's shaking. This guy who just came up is just shaking. And I recognize that he wasn't looking at me anymore, he was looking above me. And he slowly backs away, and he gets into the car, and he drives off. Bad news was, he did get the car, but it was my mom's car, so it was cool. Worst news was that my house key was on the keychain, so I was now locked out of my house. So I had to run across the parking lot to go get my parents' key so I could get changed. And this is where the story gets interesting. I walk into the church, and my entire church is in the altar. There's not a single person in the seats, they're on the altar. And they were praying for me. So I walk in, and my mom is literally like, it was some other guy who was praying with me. My mom was standing in for me. But some guy was like, hey, there he is. And it turned out, while my dad was preaching, imagine this, my dad is preaching, my mom stands up and interrupts him in the middle of service. But she's crying, and she's like, I just got a burden on my heart for Philip. I feel like he's in danger. Could we all pray for him? Isn't that amazing? And at the time, I was an idiot. I was like, what a coincidence. You won't believe what just happened to me. course, in retrospect, I realized that God was like, okay, Phil's too stupid to pray for protection. I'll talk to his mother instead. I'm sure some other mothers in the room have gotten that kind of communication before. But so we called the police, and we went over to the house to wait for him, and the police came, but so did the FBI. The Federal Bureau of Investigation showed up in my house. And so I didn't know anything about law enforcement. Since then, people are like, oh no, it's just a carjacking. It should have been the cops, but this ended up being a national case, so here's how we found out. Like after a while, they're asking me all these questions, and after a while, the FBI agent looks at my mom and says, hey, he's lucky to be alive. And she's just like, well, what was it? What do we not know? And he's like, well, if it is who we think it is, here's the story. There wasn't just one guy, there were two guys. There was one guy in your driveway, but another guy who was dropping their car off right around the corner, which we found. These guys have been on the run from the law, from Texas through Oklahoma into Kansas, and they have stolen 6 cars, and they killed everybody else they stole a car from. Your son is the only one that survived this.
Praise Jesus.
And so he starts asking me, he's like, what happened? Were there witnesses that came out? Did you say something? What happened that kept you alive? And suddenly I remember my church is praying for me. I remember seeing this guy with his eyes above me, like he saw an angel protecting me. I don't know that he did because I never asked him, but I remember thinking, I'm alive because the Lord is my refuge and strength. Because he's got a plan for me and a purpose for me. And the reason I share this testimony, and by the way, something did change in those guys' lives. Not only did they ended up, they drove towards Kansas City, but they pulled over themselves and turned themselves in.
Wow.
They pled guilty to every charge against them. In fact, right now I'm writing a book for Focus on the Family, and they actually interviewed one of the guys. He's still in prison because they're serving multiple life sentences. And one of the reasons that I share this testimony is because I know that in the church there's a lot of people that sometimes go through hardships. They get discouraged in their faith, and I'm here to lift you up today. For peace for today, so you can hear from somebody else who's been in a life-threatening situation that when death was knocking at my door, God was sovereign over it. God was sovereign. Whatever he has to do, if he has to wake somebody up in the middle of the night to pray for you, God's will will sustain you. Jesus said, upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail.
Amen.
So the devil cannot prevail against this church. And against you, we have authority over him. Amen? The second reason I tell you that testimony is because my life has turned out much different than I would have imagined when I was 16, 17 years old. I never would have imagined I was singing for millions of people on TV. And since then, since I was on American Idol, I've shared the gospel with more than 30 million people around the world. And it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with his plan. But God saw that. And he also saw somebody who was devoted to following in what he wanted for me. He saw somebody who wanted to be used by him. And I want you to know, everybody in this room, you have no idea what God wants to do with your life, but the fact that you're still breathing tells me he's still got a plan and a purpose for you. He knows something you don't know. One day you'll close your eyes in this world and you'll open them in paradise forever, where you will never face another hardship ever. If you could see what lies on the other side, you would want to be on the other side. But we're limited to what we see. But God sees our situations here, and the reason he doesn't just like that lift all of us into heaven is because he wants to use us to reach other people with his love. He wants more people to come spend eternity with him. So he's got a divine purpose and a divine destiny for you. And the only way to realize it is by surrendering your life to Jesus. And the good news is his plan, it includes joy. It includes peace that endures all times, whether you're on the highs or the lows. That's basically what this song was about. I just gave you a 40-minute story for a 5-minute song. I hope you enjoyed it. This song is called You're Not Shaken.
I'm sinking in a river that is raging. I'm drowning. Will I ever rise to breathe again? I wanna know why while I'm here, and I may never know why. No, I may not understand, but I will lift up my eyes, and I trust this is your way. Every little thing that I would dream would be just slips away like water through my head. When it seems the walls are crashing down, but they hold me up. Say no more, let go of you now, because I know, now that I am in love, all the shadow again. Oh, you're not shaking, you're not shaking. You're running beside me, you are never there. Oh, you're not shaking. Every little thing that I dream would be just slips away. And it seems the walls of my belief are crashing down like they're on me. Oh, say I won't let go of you now, because I know, you're not shaking. Oh, you're not shaking. 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 Oh, how he loves you and me. Oh, how he loves you and me. He gave his life. What more could he give? Oh, how he loves you. Oh, how he loves me. You know how he loves you and me. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think you're going to do okay for yourself. You've done pretty well. Did you guys enjoy today's concert from Phil Stacey and this band? He's always been one of our favorites here at New Hope Alive. For this whole event to take off, took a lot of prayer, a lot of planning, and there's a lot of businesses that did financially support this because this is not free. Just so you guys know, he goes around the world and has sold out stadiums, festivals, and arenas, and probably could have asked for a ton more money, but we wanted to be a blessing to him and these band members that drove 3+ hours to come here and put on a spirit-filled show for you guys. For just real quick, let me go through the list of everyone that's financially supported this event. A ShopRite out of Vassar, VG's out of Cairo, Dunn's Hardware out of Reese, Bender Insurance out of Reese, Yarborough Insurance out of Attica, Reardon CPA out of Florida. Yeah, you're welcome. It's a good thing my brother and I went to high school with him. Pompey's Pizza from here in town, Papio's Bar and Grill, State Street Fitness out of Caro, Hirschman Oil, Ozentoski Realty, Frankenmuth Credit Union, Vassar Building Supply, Crop Insurance Agency, Reese Health and Fitness, Nice Insurance out of Cass City, Walmart out of Carroll, and Wahlburgers out of Flint, and also one of our big sponsors is Woodman, Dave Jansen back here. We've got 2 more drawings. We've got one for a kid and one for an adult. We'll do the adult first and save the kid for last.